Thank you for being here. I appreciate everybody. I imagine half of you guys are here because you're like, I want to make $1 million. And the other half of you are here saying, I just want my goddamn life back. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll have a good idea of where you're going to be 10 years from today, because that's really the focus of the presentation. It's not just about make $1 million a year. If you make $1 million this year and then next year you make nothing, how good is that? You got to be able to do it for many years to come. So that's really the goal. So there's this wonderful story back in the 80s where a bunch of auto executives, they get together and they travel to Japan to essentially find out how the Japanese counterparts actually make their vehicles. So they get together, they get on a plane, and they travel to Japan. And when they get there, somebody picks them up, they take them to the manufacturers, and they take them through the belt or the process line, right? And they show them every station that they actually are working at. And in the United States back in the days, the very last station was a person that would sit there, and he had a rubber mallet in his hand. And his job was to hit the hinges of the door to ensure the door actually fits, the hinges fit, and the door was going to close properly. That's what they did in the United States. But the auto executives from America didn't see that. So they're like, wait a minute, you're missing a station. They said, no, we're not missing a station, we make amazing cars. They're like, no, you're missing a station. They're like, okay, which one? They say, what about this guy that's supposed to hit the doors, make sure the door fits properly? And he's like, yeah, no, we don't have that, we don't do that. And then the auto executives from the United States say, well, at what point do you actually ensure that the door fits? They say, we do that when we engineer the vehicle, the product. So in Japan, they engineered for the outcome. They engineered for success. They knew what they wanted, and they actually engineered for it. And that's such an amazing principle for all of us to be aware of. And I know all of us wish FedEx Ground would do the same, where when somebody is failing or they're struggling, they don't just come and put a station with a guy with a sledgehammer in their hand and they say, we're about to give you an OTC. So, but that is the environment we've all chosen to be in, right? We all have the opportunity to get out. We all have the opportunity to sell our businesses and move on to other opportunities. In my humble opinion, this is an absolutely amazing business. Very rarely do you get the guaranteed income, the stability of a Fortune 500 company or whatever FedEx is, where your future is almost guaranteed. All you have to do is make sure you meet the standards of FedEx. So my presentation today will take into consideration the fact that FedEx will never change for the better, and they might actually change for the worse. As far as, we've all seen what they've done to us in the past year. And I think, again, it's just the fact that nobody at the top thinks about us. Nobody thinks about what can we do to actually make sure the contractors are successful. What is that formula that we have to give them? So they just put a sledgehammer at the end. So my presentation will take that into consideration. We all have to accept the fact that that's going to be as is, and it might get worse. Lastly, I've taken the liberty to assume all of you guys have an objective, an outcome, a strategy. And that strategy is a 10-year strategy, you want to stay in this business for 10 years, and you want to increase your net worth by $10 million. So if you're worth $2 million today on paper or in cash, your goal is to have $12 million. If you're already worth $10 million, your goal is to be worth $20 million. So that's going to be also one of the thought processes that I have in the presentation. Now, before I talk about some of these aspects, I think it's a little bit important for you guys to hear a little bit about my story, because I think it's easy for a lot of vendors or software providers to come out and say, we do this, we do that, and we're magical, and we do everything for you. And the funny thing is, they've never even been a contractor. How can you service my needs? How do you even understand my pain points when you've never dealt with FedEx, right? Very, very unique beast. So I got involved in the FedEx world approximately sometimes mid to last July. So I'm officially coming across my first year anniversary. I took over an entity in the middle of COVID, and the CSP was essentially failing. Significant amount of contingency service was being provided to them, and they were on the verge of being OTC'd and losing their company. So I come in and I purchased the company, annual revenue about $2.5 million, and I purchased the company for $750,000. It's my first foray into this business. Everybody says you're crazy, you can't take over an entity that's failing, you've never done this, what the heck are you thinking? But I'm a little bit crazy, so I took it over anyways. I took it over, and in about 6 weeks, give or take, that entire operation was fully functional, and it was essentially meeting all the standards of FedEx, right? 99% pickup, accident, all that wonderful stuff. So that process took about 6 to 8 weeks, and the operation was absolutely phenomenal. About 2 months into it, FedEx senior manager and the BDS department approached me and said, do you want to do contingency? And I said, well, I don't know what, tell me more. I mean, at that point, I really didn't have a full understanding of what contingency was. So they said, well, this is what you do. There's another station, Tacoma, that's in complete chaos, and we need your help. And I said, okay, what's the contract? How much do you pay? All that stuff. And they never want to pay enough, right? But essentially, a contingency was like, hire a bunch of people for us, send them to Tacoma, and maybe 2 weeks from today, maybe 4 weeks from today, maybe even 2 days from today, we're like, okay, we no longer need your help. And I said, well, that doesn't work for me. You're telling me to go out there and hire people and mentor them and coach them and love them and nurture them and bring them onto my company and ask them to go to another station or however the concept is, and then 2 weeks from today, I can't tell them if they have a job? I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it. I refuse to do it. Because when I took over the entity, my first entity, I understood, just like any other business we ever will deal with, everything comes down to the human aspect. And if you can master that aspect, everything else will take care of itself. And that's what I mastered very, very early on. I was privileged to do that. So I refused to do it. So they come back to me sometimes late October, and they say, well, we'd like your help. And this station was really in trouble, this other station. And we'd be willing to give you what they call, apparently now, I know it's called DCA, Dedicated Contingency Agreement. And I said, okay, tell me more about that. And they said, well, it's a contract. We pay you no matter what. We pay you if you do stops. We pay you if you don't do stops. I was like, that sounds good. How long? So it was a 6-month contract to begin with. I was like, okay, that's something I can work with. And if there's no work 2 months from today, that's okay, because I still have money coming in. I can still pay my employees without having to fire them. And hopefully, a little bit down the road, I can find them something else. So I obviously accepted the DCA contract. This was sometimes around November of last year. I'm in the business for about 4 months. So my first peak, I basically go through 2 separate stations, and both stations are in trouble, as you guys know, post-COVID. And then during December, another contractor approaches me and says, I'm trying to buy this other CSA, It's a big CSA. He's actually been OTC'd, and he needs to get out. Like, they're kicking him out. But they won't give it to me. Like, I can't buy the full thing because the station wants to split it. So would you want to, like, take half, and I take the half? I said, that sounds interesting. Let's talk. So we take over the entity completely in trouble. We sign the contracts and everything sometimes in the middle of December. The CSA does just over $1 million a year, and we took it over for $112,000. We took it over on January 1st. That was the stand-up date, or the first Saturday of January. And my partner fixed it within 1 week. So within 1 week, it was perfectly operational. We've never had to deal with it since then. During this time, January and February, I'm still providing DCA, contingency, in the Tacoma station. And sometimes in February or whatnot, the CSP that I was providing services to, he just threw up his hand. He said, screw this, I don't want to deal with this no more. This is too much. So he literally gave up those routes. And FedEx senior station manager said, yeah, we're going to give it to you. You've been doing the service and all that stuff. But being a businessman, I didn't want to risk it. I was like, yeah, you're telling me you're going to give me this CSA, but I've been in this business now for about 6 months. What you guys say and what you guys do is two completely separate things. We've all seen that, right? So I refused to wait, even though the senior station manager told me, we're giving it to you. So this CSA does just under $1 million, $960,000 a year, and I pay the seller $60,000 for it. And literally within a few weeks thereafter, the station manager actually approaches me and says, here's a phone number for this AO, why don't you call him? And by now, I know what it means when they approach me. So I call the owner, and I talk. And this was so enlightening in the sense that some contractors, I think there are so many different type of contractors. We're all from different backgrounds. We all have different experiences. Some of us are really, really cheap. Some of us are really too generous. And the truth is, neither works. You can be super, super generous. It's still not going to work. People will show up to work, but they're not going to take care of your company. So this is the company that I took over. The company that I took over, the owner is probably worth over $20 million. He got the CSA for free because he does some special things for FedEx and Alaska, airplanes, all sorts of fun stuff. And he's like, dude, I don't know what to do. It's like I spent unlimited amount of money. His general manager was getting paid about $170,000 a year. And their ILS was 80%. So anyways, he does $1.9 million a year. I offer the guy $120,000. He happily takes it, and he says, oh my God, that's so generous, thank you. And I knew at that point, I was like, God damn it, I should have offered him 50. 30? Yeah, there you go, I should have offered him 30. And the fun thing is, it did come with 20 scanners from Peak Technologies, which apparently are like $2,000 each. And it came with 15 tablets. And this was, I don't know, April. So this was basically my month 8, my month 9. I haven't done any more CSAs for the past 3 months, so I've been like cruising for about 3 months. So that's essentially my story as a contractor. So I think it was important for you guys to have that background so that when I'm presenting a few ideas here, you guys actually hopefully understand that it's not just hot air coming out of nowhere, right? It's actually real world experience. And you guys have all seen this, where pretty much every station is always behind. Like, it's amazing how everybody's always failing. Not everybody, but we almost all of us have CSPs in our stations that they're failing, right? So that's my story. Now I just want to talk about the 5 things. I think there are 5 things we should all try to master Again, these entire 5 points are assuming you want to stick around in this business for 10 years and increase your net worth by $10 million. It's a long-term perspective. There's this concept of finite game and infinite game, right? Finite game is something that I plan on getting the hell out in 6 months. Screw the drivers, screw the trucks, screw everything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do the right thing because it's finite. Infinite means I'm going to do the right thing because down the road I'm going to get rewarded properly for it. It goes on. Hopefully for beyond 10 years, but my story or my presentation is going to focus on the 10-year concept. After 10 years, I think get out and then do it again, hopefully. So the first thing is you need to continue being an extraordinary CEO. And for some of you guys that are not extraordinary CEOs, you need to learn to be an extraordinary CEO. And what that is you just have to mentor people, coach people, nurture them like they're your kids, right? And a lot of us don't do that. We have this internal belief that we're working with blue-collar workers. We all come from, again, different industries and experience and whatnot, and we come in and we're dealing with a bunch of 20-year-old kids, and we think they're blue-collar, and they don't need culture. They don't need morale. Who cares? That's just, you're getting the boxes, just deliver. But I'm here to tell you, if you actually focus on culture, and if you actually focus on morale, everything else will take care of itself. Everything comes down to the human aspect. And I can see so many contractors that have forgotten that, right? When they start failing, they focus on the wrong thing. Focus on the right thing, and that's the human aspect, and everything else will just essentially work itself. The number 2 point I want to talk about is forget the idea of always be hiring. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I've done a whole bunch of other different businesses and I've traveled the world, a whole lot of stuff. But the very first advice anybody ever asks any contractor is like, what do I do to be successful? They're like, always be hiring. Well, let's be honest, that presupposes that your people are always quitting. And they kind of are, right? But when you actually approach your company with that perspective that your people are always just constantly are quitting, your management team looks at drivers with a different set of eyes, as opposed to this idea of let's love them, let's nurture them, let's care for them. Let's not cheat them. It's amazing how many contractors are so short-sighted. They're that finite game mentality. They try to save every penny. They promise people $1 per stop, but they only pay them 99 cents. They think they got away. Yes, I saved $50 this week. I don't understand it. I've never lived that mentality, but I'm here to say if you're that type of person, you're not going to be in this business for the next 10 years. And if you are, you're not going to increase, in my humble opinion, your net worth by $10 million. So it's important for all of us as CEOs to learn the skills and the leadership skills necessary to actually retain our people. A lot of us, we just don't do that, right? It's all the small things that actually make people want to work for you. You just got to do a lot of the small things, and they will actually come to work and take care of your company. Number 3, give your management team the authority and the autonomy. Just like your kid, be there to catch them. If they're about to fall, catch them. You want to give them a target to hit, whatever that target is. Is it $1.20 per stop? Is it 200 stops per dispatched driver? Is it 45% of payroll? I don't care what it is, but they have to have a target to hit. It's amazing how some contractors, they have a staff of drivers, and you ask them who's showing up to work tomorrow, they're like, everybody. Like, whoever wants to work tomorrow, they're showing up. It's just, I mean, this business, as you guys have seen, FedEx doesn't pay us a lot to make a lot of mistakes. We can make small little mistakes here and there, but not a lot. And our BCs, our leaders, our general managers, our area managers, whatever it is that you want to call them, if you love them, if you take care of them, if you lead them, if you help them, they will be absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you guys a story about giving people a target, something to actually hit from a psychology perspective. If I was to say, pick that corner of the wall and start walking, I want you to walk straight to that wall. That's the only thing that I want you to just straight walk to that wall. And then as you're walking, I put this podium in front of you. What are you going to do? You're very, very likely going to go around and get to the corner of the wall. Why? I didn't tell you to go around. I said go straight. You disobeyed what I told you to do. But the human mind is so amazing in the sense that it doesn't care what route it takes. As long as it has a target to hit, it will figure out a way to hit it. And that's pretty much what we contractors are, right? FedEx tells us do this, 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 and they tell us to do 1,000 things, and we figure a way to hit it. So make sure your BCs and general managers actually have a target to hit. And the ones that don't, well, they're not going to meet those targets. Now, on the opposite side, which is what's happening across the country with a lot of contractors and their BCs, is let's say I tell you to go to one of the corners. I don't care which corner you go to, just go to one. And then as you're walking, I put this podium in front of you. Very likely, you're going to turn around and you're going to try to go for another corner. Why? Because you don't actually have a crystal clear target. What is it that you're actually trying to hit? You're not trying to go to that corner, you're trying to go to any corner. And that's what's happening all across the country with a lot of BCs. They don't really have a crystal clear objective of what it is that they're trying to target. And what happens is a week later, when our budget is high on payroll, as owners, we're trying to run payroll, a week later, like, oh my God, payroll is so high. Well, it's already too late, obviously, as most of you guys know. But it's not your manager's fault. He didn't have the tools and the resources necessary, and most of the time, he didn't even know what the target was. So allow your general managers, BCs, area managers, the authority and the autonomy to thrive and flourish. Let them unleash the lion within. And give them hope, give them dreams, give them a vision of where you see yourself going to. And now you actually have an objective, don't you? We all, hopefully, have this vision where we're going to be in this business for the next 10 years, and our net worth is going to increase by $10 million. So if you have that objective, if that's your strategy, if that's your goal, now you actually have something tangible to offer your management team, to offer your leadership team. So that's number 3. Number 4, this happens quite often with companies where they become successful. They do a certain number of things, whatever those things are, and they become very, very successful. It's just human psychology. And once you're successful, all of a sudden, you're like, I don't need to do that anymore. I'm successful. I'm good. We're good. We know what we're doing. I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. I don't need to follow that process. That process is stupid. I'm not saying don't adapt. Adapt as you see fit, of course. but put in place the right processes and make sure those processes, which essentially become functions of a formula, are always followed. When any of those functions don't actually get followed, you don't get the same results. I actually went through a story as such myself. With the fourth CSA that I acquired, my company, we would send a massive amount of interviews to my management team to interview. So the first 3 CSAs that I got, I actually was involved myself at the transition stage, at the onboarding stage. I met the drivers, I met the management team, everything. The fourth CSA, I never met a single employee. I didn't get involved at all whatsoever. My regional manager, we obviously had conference calls with my regional manager, the station manager, and he knew I'm taking over the CSA, so he basically, after the third CSA, he knew what he's gonna need to do to make this thing successful. But just like any child of yours, as they're getting older and older and you give them advice, sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they don't follow the best practices, those small functions that actually equal success. So we were sending them a lot of interviews, but we weren't getting people actually becoming drivers. So I got very concerned. I was like, what's going on here? It's like, this has never happened. I've done 3 CSAs. Like, I'm sending a boatload of interviews, but none of them are actually becoming drivers. We're getting very few of them. So I actually, got in a car and I drove and I went to the station and I actually watched my management team do interviews. It's amazing how much of the processes, those small things that I had implemented, the reason these CSAs were so successful, it's amazing how many of those small functions my management team was not following. So I basically sat down with my management team and regional management manager and we discussed it. But I didn't just hammer it into their brain. I didn't take a sledgehammer and say, you have to do this. I took them through a journey. I took them through a story. See, we're all human beings, and if you tell your manager, some contractors do use a sledgehammer on their managers. But you're not, in my humble opinion, you're just not going to get to that objective that I'm trying to inspire all of us to get to. You can't use a sledgehammer on your manager. You can tell them, I'm going to fire you. I mean, God damn it, like with drivers, that's the worst thing. You tell people I'm going to fire you, it's like, oh, you want to fire me? I'm just going to quit myself, right? They just walk out. You can't, it's amazing. You can't, there is no concept of scaring people with their jobs in this business. Your BCs, depending on your BC, there's a little bit of flexibility there. But if you really want to be successful, if you really want to work 4 hours a week, if you really want to increase your net worth by $10 million, you have to learn to actually explain why certain processes and functions and everything are actually put in place to ensure success. So I explained. I mean, I'm the boss. I can tell them, hey, do it. Otherwise, I fire you. And these were my BCs and management team. Very likely, they would have done it just the same. But having explained to them and having them be able to provide feedback made them feel involved, made them feel care about the company, made them feel that I actually care about them. I think when people ask me, what's the reason of your success? There are obviously a whole lot of reasons, but one of them, in my own humble opinion, is I genuinely care. And it's just my opinion that you have to somehow master that. You can't be fake. I'm telling you guys, I've seen some contractors try to be fake, right? They try to be like, oh, I care about you, I love you, I'm going to take care of you, I'm just going through a hard time right now. But it's fine if you're going through a hard time right now, but make sure 3 months later, when you're no longer going through a hard time, you reward that person. Make sure your reputation precedes you. It's very, very important. My entire staff knows that if my management team ever offers them anything, I don't care what it is, within reason, my management team knows what their limit is, but my entire driver staff, they know that when my management team says something, it's basically just like a signature, as if I've signed that document myself, and it's an agreement, it's a binding agreement. I will follow through, or my company will follow through. It's a lot of small little stuff that we all forget to do that essentially don't allow us to be as successful as we want to. So that's one. The last one is an interesting one. How many of you guys know who Tim Cook is? By a raise of hand, please. Thank you. How many of you guys knew who Tim Cook was when Steve Jobs was alive? A significantly less number of hands, of course. As most of you guys by now know, when Steve Jobs was alive, Tim Cook was in fact Steve Jobs' right hand. He essentially took care of everything, all the little small stuff. I'm not saying he deserved the credit because he didn't have the vision. The vision was the CEO, an extraordinary CEO nevertheless, Steve Jobs. It was his vision to do everything that they did as a company. But it was Tim Cook that actually allowed and offered the capacity for Steve Jobs to have the freedom and the creativity to execute on that vision. And that's essentially what Route Elite is. Obviously, a lot of people have asked me today and in the past few weeks, what does RouteElite.com do? How can you help us? And the answer is a little bit difficult because it's a lot that we do. But I think it is best summed up in the fact that we are your Tim Cook. Because you cannot be an extraordinary CEO, you cannot increase your net worth by $10 million in the next 10 years without having a Tim Cook. I'm not saying make me or make Route Elite your Tim Cook. Find a Tim Cook somewhere else. But you need a Tim Cook so that you can focus on the vision, on that strategy, on that objective where you want to be in the next 10 years. To me, when I got involved in this business, it was such a ridiculous idea where, the P&D manager, she pulls me into her office. She's like, you got to watch your DSW. I was like, well, show me how to watch it. She showed it to me and all stuff. I was like, I'm supposed to do this? I'm a multi-millionaire. And very, very likely, 98% of all of you are millionaires on paper, at minimum, and some of you guys are multi-millionaires. The idea that we wake up in the morning and we go to sleep at night to think about this stupid thing called DSW on MGBA, which isn't even mobile friendly, is shocking. The idea that you can't be early 5 seconds to a pickup is shocking. But that's what they want you to do. Either figure out a way to do it or get out. We are your Tim Cook. We make sure you never have to log into DSW. As the owners, your BCs have to. We work with that. You never have to worry about, is pickup going to get done on time? Is pickup going to be early? Is pickup going to be late? You never have to worry if people are stealing gas from you. And I imagine, based on the conversations I've had, approximately 50% of like 50% of us, our staff at one point or another, steal gas from us. And I don't blame them. They're a bunch of 20-year-old kids. They see an opportunity, they're on the road, they're broke. And they're like, hey, nobody is watching. And when they realize nobody is watching, that becomes such a contagious cancer, where the rest of your staff, slowly but surely, will realize that nobody is watching, whether it's pickups, whether it's DSW, whether it's gas. I'm sure some of you guys have drivers that clock in and clock out with the intention of just getting paid for the day because they know nobody is watching. And let's be honest, it's hard. As the CEO, most of us have other businesses. Most of us are married with kids. I'm single, but most of you guys. So it gets busy. It's impossible. And let's be honest, every service vendor that I've had the privilege to work with in the FedEx world, you guys could potentially have different experiences, but in my humble opinion, they all suck. They all treat us as if we're their goddamn bank account. It's like they don't do jack. Everything sucks. They make us stay on phone calls. They make us go through loopholes and all that stuff. It's like, it's as if they learned from FedEx. And that's how they treat us. And it makes it very difficult. It makes it very, very difficult. There's a reason why a lot of new CSPs, they don't last long. They get in, and we all are, like, every new contractor that I ever talk to, they're all aspiring to have 100 routes or 200 routes because they've listened to Spencer Patton. They're like, I want to have 200 routes. I want to have 100 routes. And then within 6 weeks, their souls are crushed by FedEx. And they usually end up selling. They sell for a lot less than they paid for. And to me, it's such a sad situation because I do believe in the future of this enterprise that we're all involved in. How we get to take advantage of it, remains to be seen, I guess. But we have to play the game, and we have to play the game on their field, not on our field. That's something we have to learn. Most of us, we get into this business, we think we're business owners. Are we? I don't know, right? Like FedEx literally makes it very, very difficult for us to actually run a business. So accept that, be okay with it, learn to use that as your advantage. If you can figure out a way to stay in this business for 10 years, don't commit suicide, don't have a stroke, and stay in the business, and find your Tim Cook, find yourself 2 to 3 other CSAs for pennies on the dollar. I will never advise anybody to pay 7-figure for this business. I mean, I know it's worth it, right? If you're from the outside world, and sometimes even when you're inside the business, it's worth it because it's got significant revenue. But I think if you have your Tim Cook, why pay 7 figures when you can pay pennies on the dollar? So, you don't have to do it in 8 months. You don't even have to do it in 18 months. Take your time to first master the skills of being an extraordinary CEO. Find your Tim Cook. And then after that, slowly but surely, in the next 3 to 7 years, make sure you find yourself 2, 3, 4 CSAs for pennies on the dollar. And I'm sure all of you guys can do that calculation yourself. And in the next 10 years, if you have 4 to 5 CSAs, very likely our businesses have doubled in the next 10 years, give or take. Somewhere within the $10 million range is what your companies are going to be worth. Most of you know how much profit we have on a percentage basis. Some of us are 8%, some of us are 14, 15, some are lucky enough and very good enough to be in the 20% range, but I think if you take on the investor mentality as I do, you're going to be in the low teens number, 12, 13, somewhere in that range if you run a good operation. So my hope is you guys will have that objective of 10 years, $10 million net worth, and you'll want to find your temp cook. And if you think that that's a legitimate objective, let's say that's a legitimate goal, and you want to actually achieve it, myself and my company would absolutely love the privilege to come along that journey with you. Thank you very much. Apparently, I finished very, very early. So with the exception of asking me how much does this service cost, I would be happy to, this young Melody will walk through and see who might have a question. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer.
Once, going twice.
That's a nobody. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and enjoy your time.
It's like the easiest job I've ever had.
You're welcome.
Fantastic. Oh, man. Okay, hold on. Okay.
So you said that you started about a year ago, and then you started buying CSS and all those things. So most of the CSS that you acquired didn't come with trucks.
Correct.
Yeah, and presumably with cash.
Correct.
So how much that play into it, like having an extra cash stashed somewhere where you can just pay the cash, get the CSA, invest in trucks and all those things, versus I'm assuming that you didn't have to find the money from your existing business. You probably had a side thing going on where you had the cash that came from, right?
Well, we live in Seattle. I'll see if you could ask me the same question in Seattle. But the answer to your question is, yes, they did not come with trucks. That was just for the revenue of the company. And yes, I did have cash in the bank to actually be able to purchase these trucks. Not a single one of my trucks is new, by the way. All of them are old. Piece of crap. They're all 400,000 miles or above. But they work. We have mechanics. They take care of them. But yeah, does that answer your question? I mean, so the key for you guys is the ones that don't have as much access to cash. One of the beauties is you can finance these things. And you have cash flow. So if you're running a really, really good business, to me, it's almost like buying a house. It's like buying 10 houses or like 5 CSAs, like 5 houses, and having the tenant pay for those houses. So it works just as fine. You still will have a net worth of $10 million, hopefully in 10 years. It's just your cash flow in the next 10 years, as opposed to being $1 million, it's probably going to be like, let's say $250,000 or whatever the number ends up being, right? So you still have the capability to get there. It's just the journey will be a little bit more difficult. But how amazing is it that you don't have to worry about being able to make rent or payment or be able to make payroll, because FedEx guarantees your compensation. Okay, thank you, everybody. Oh, question right over there. That's a big room.
Hi. Do you offer a demo of what you guys do that you can sign up for on your website?
Sure. Yeah. It's a very, very extensive demo. As you guys can imagine, it's a sight to be seen. It really is. It's absolutely magical because it's 7,000% razor sharp focus towards FedEx CSPs. We don't do Amazon DSP. We don't even do line haul. I was privileged enough to recently be given 2 dedicated line hauls out of Auburn, Washington by FedEx, but I haven't stood up on that contract yet, so I have no idea how to run a line haul business. But my assumption is it's the same thing. I just got to keep the drivers happy. But that said, we only focus on P&D. So if you're line haul, unfortunately, there's nothing that I can do for you. There are certain things that I can work with you as your right hand to ensure we put in place the right functions. But the software, so everything that we do is a marriage between people and software. This is not just a software program, right? Because just like I've been saying, it's a right hand. A software cannot be completely your right hand. So it's a very extensive presentation, or a demo. So if you go to our website and just request for a demo, we will jump on a call and we'll go through that extensive presentation. But it's absolutely, absolutely magical. It's a sight to be seen. And every single client and we've recently just launched this and opened it up like 6 weeks ago to clients. Every single client that's actually seen a demo of the product, because again, the product comes with that marriage of people being involved, they're like, I don't care what it costs, man, I want the damn thing. And my response to them, unfortunately at this time, is just be patient for a few weeks because we take a very, very long-term approach to everything that we do. We're not just like any other software vendor where it says, give us your credit card, let us charge you for a few months, and then after that, we'll see what happens. We really want to become an extension of your company. We want to become an extension of your management team, and we want to have that 10-year relationship. So one of the things that is happening starting in the month of August, towards the end of the month of August, we actually have a physical class, training class, where you yourself can attend or send your BCs, and it's all focused on operation. How do you get your drivers to actually stick with your company for 6 months or 3 months longer than they would with any other entity? There are secrets of small little things, and Routerly.com, the software actually takes every single one of those things into consideration. So everything is provided to your management team. There's nothing that they can miss. If they miss it, we catch it, we bring it to your attention. Again, you're supposed to be able to, as Routerly.com CEO, and we are your COO, you're supposed to be able to go to sleep without getting a single phone call, without a single time logging into DSW or FCC or anything to that effect. But your job is to have breakfast with your management team. Your job is to talk to your management team and say, how are you? How you doing? Make sure they know that you care. So that's really, you get to become a CEO as opposed to a slave. Yes, sir.
Hey, hi there. I was hoping you could talk maybe practically about the vision for the software. Obviously, you probably have a roadmap of where you envision the product going and how that compares to where it is today. So sort of what it's doing today versus where you see it going maybe the next 6 months, the next year, that comparison.
That's a great question. Thank you. So just like your right hand, what we do today doesn't mean we're going to do the same thing 3 months from today, because FedEx keeps changing the target, right? One day they're like, go over there. Another day they're like, go over there. God damn it, it makes it so difficult. So you're never going to see us stick with like, this is what we do, this is how we do it. We don't care about the fact that FedEx just, changed their target 5,000%. We're still doing this. We change as the FedEx model changes your business, right? So whether you end up doing contingency and you need help contingency, onboarding people or doing everything that you do, whatever your business model is, We, as your right hand, will change with you. That's at the individual entity level. At the software level, pretty much everything that I have talked about today is already on Radley.com. So now, can the roadmap change? Can we do more? The answer is yes. But pretty much everything that I've talked about today when we show you a demo of the product already exists, which is why I say it's absolutely a sight to be seen, because you look at it and you're like, oh my God. It really, really does the intelligent thing at the right time, at the right place, with the right context. And it allows your management team to know their target at all times. So you don't have to do anything. They actually are given their target with no human input, not at the CEO level. Does that answer your question, sir? Give or take. All right. The rest I'll answer on the demo. Anybody else? Thank you, everybody. One more hand? I'll take it.